This is Bryan Clark, In Your Head Wrestling, 3-time World Tag Team Champions, breaking necks and cashing checks.
All right, we're back. We're joined by Bryan Clark. I want to welcome you to In Your Head.
Good. How's it going, guys?
Good, thanks. Yourself?
I'm doing fine.
All right. Let me know if anybody wants to call in tonight. The number is 508-644-8503. And we actually have a caller right now. He's been calling all night. He's been trying to talk. He's been calling you like an hour before we went live. So we're going to let him
Really?
have the...
Wow.
Yeah. We'll let him have the first question here. Brian?
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi, is this Bryan Clark?
Yeah, go ahead. Let's hear it.
Yeah, my question was, first, it's pretty cool that your name is spelled the same way as mine. People always misspell my name. Mine's with a Y also.
Mine is spelled like yours. Okay.
Yeah, my question was, I read somewhere online that you had a real-life dislike and anger towards Scott Hall, and I was just wondering if you were willing to elaborate on that or not, or what exactly was the root of it.
Wow, right out of the gates with that one, huh?
Yeah, man, we're going to build up to that.
I mean,
yeah,
I don't want to make you mad or anything.
No, hey, man, not a problem. I don't have a problem with talking. Basically just, there's really not a whole lot to talk about. We had a big wrestling reunion about a month ago in Charlotte, North Carolina. And, same Scott Hall, nothing's changed. The guy was completely trashed the night before. He does what he always does, make an ass of himself. And, there's really nothing positive to say about the guy other than he needs to get some help. I think he's tried that, but it's probably not working. But, all he can do is try, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was at the NWA Legends Fan Fest. I actually heard a rumor that I think it wasn't Applebee's. It was one of those kind of restaurants that I guess he got in trouble in, and they had to throw him out.
Yeah,
what I heard.
Seems like
Smoky Bones.
Yeah, I actually ran into him in the lobby in the hotel, and he's a little whipped dog. He just sort of looked at me and just sort of shied away. Didn't say a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
But that's fine. That's just the guy has issues, and maybe he can get some help for it. I don't know.
Yeah. That's not really a place to be.
There were a lot of people in line, for his autograph, and I even heard people saying, "Well, I got to get his autograph now before he passes away." That was their kind of thinking also. So the guy, he needs some help.
Mm-hmm. Anything else there, Brian?
No. I thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, thanks for calling, Brian.
All right, not a problem.
How you doing health-wise?
Hey, man, I'm doing great. I box twice a week. I work out about 5 days a week in the morning. I get up and train. I'm at the gym I get up at 4. I'm at the gym by 5. So I had back surgery about 4 years ago, completely healed up from that, and I feel great.
I have to bring this up because Intra and I were both big fans of AWA Classics. They showed every night at midnight, which
right.
I could tell that you're a big fan of it too. But you popped up
Not
recently.
at all, but go ahead.
Right. You popped up recently as they're showing kind of the dying days of the AWA. It's like, I guess the early 90s. You popped up as a Night Stalker. Just wondering, what you thought of that gimmick and your time in the AWA.
I was there. Actually, the time that I was there, really a bad time for me. I guess I hadn't even been trained, basically. I was still in college, actually, on athletic scholarship at Central Missouri State, and got the chance to meet with Ox Baker, and he sort of introduced me to the business. But other than basically being shown how to tie up in his living room, that was really the only training I had. I know it's sad to say, but it's the truth.
Uh-huh.
So I was there for just a few shows at the very end, like you said, but really nothing. Man, I was even, I don't know, before being green, if I could, it was just really a time where, I had a long way to go to actually learn how to work.
Mm-hmm. Did you think that was a big deal at the time, being in the AWA, or did you kind of know it was on its way out?
I had a feeling even then, even still just being green to the business, I knew that I could, and what Ox was telling me that, yeah, it was on its way out, but still, I mean, I was, I was still a fan of the business, always have been, so it was just an opportunity, a chance to learn.
Any interesting stories with Ox Baker? He's one of our favorite guests on the show.
You know what? Nothing. Just a very funny character.
Mm-hmm.
you know, the few times I did, you know, travel with him, it was always a lot of comedy. You know, from just crazy stuff. I mean, like I remember we had a Blazer that I had back in college, and we were traveling to some of the shows, and I'd already fallen asleep, and I guess it stopped and made a gas stop, and he's driving like I wake up like maybe an hour later, and the truck's like in low, and I'm like, why are we going so slow? And of course, you know, Ox never shifted the gear, and it was just brutal, man. Just some of the stuff he would do. I just didn't think, didn't care, you know. Just very, wherever you went, you know how loud he is. So,
oh yeah,
you know, he always causes a scene, man.
I just saw him recently at a show here just last year. It was like a local show, and it's pretty funny because he was getting like these kids that were like 8 or 9 to buy like best of Ox Baker DVDs and T-shirts, and you know, there's no way they really knew anything about the guy. But he was just so loud, and he's standing in the hallway and just telling everybody to buy stuff, and yeah, he was really selling it.
Well, you know, and just his look, you know, even probably today, that look, you know, back from Escape from New York and all that whole thing, but that look was just always one of a kind, without a doubt.
Mm-hmm. We got a call here. We got Kicks on the line.
All right.
Hey, Bryan. How you doing?
Good. How's it going?
Pretty good. I just wanted to ask a couple questions. My first question was, who came up with the atom bomb gimmick in the WWF?
That would be WWF Creative. That was their idea. I put you know, I put a lot of spins on it, you know, with my ideas as far as like the contact lens and those kind of things to, you know, put as much as I could as far as adding to it. But initially, of course, that was all theirs.
Mm-hmm. When you first heard the name, just like Atom Bomb, like kind of what went through your head? Did you think, oh, that's like a bad name, or do you think it was?
You know what? Well, actually, the first one that was pitched to me was the Ringmaster.
Oh, really?
Which was originally, you know, was later with Stone Cold's deal. So I'm thinking, and I didn't like the Ringmaster at all. So I'm thinking, okay, of the two, I'm liking Atom Bomb a little more. So I guess, you know, at the time, it was okay. I wasn't real disappointed with it.
Yeah, I'd say, you know, kind of fit in more at that time because wrestling was a little more, everybody had gimmicks and whatnot.
Yeah,
later on, it would have been a little more gimmicky, I guess.
Yes.
Do you have anything else, Kicks?
Yeah, just one more. I just wanted to ask about what are your fondest memories of Bryan Adams?
Oh man, there's so many. Just a great person. I can honestly say, man, going down the road and traveling with him as much as I did was never boring. The guy, I mean, he could be in the locker room and everybody would basically listen to his stories. I mean, his impersonations of other people, just hilarious, man. Just a good person all the way around.
Before they put the team together, were you two friends?
You know, we basically were in New York at the same time. We were friends, but just not like we were as a team. But we had so many similarities that it was pretty amazing once we got to know each other. Mm-hmm.
Did you keep in contact with him? You know, after you guys left WWF?
Yes, I did. We would talk at least. You know, once a week, maybe even more, depending on, you know, what was going on.
Yeah. Do you have anything else, Kicks?
No, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks for calling in, man.
You got it. All right.
All right, bye.
One last thing before I stop talking about the AWA is, did you keep the giant axe?
You know what? I did not keep it. I have no idea where it's at. I don't know if I may have gave it to someone who knows. I have no idea where it's at.
Yeah. That was a hell of a foreign object. Just,
hell of a battle axe, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You know, hey, you know, young green, have no idea. You know, come up with something, right?
So how did you go from like the AWA to the WWF?
You know what? Like I said, the AWA was just a very short-lived thing. I knew that, you know, just talking to Larry Zbyszko back in those days, I really needed to learn how to work, and the only way I was going to do that was to get properly trained. So I ended up moving to Atlanta, and on the invite from Jody Hamilton, and then actually being trained by him and Sarge, which was Dwayne Bruce, and those guys are the ones who trained me so I could work and actually get into Smoky Mountain, which was, you know, Jim Cornette's promotion. So really, you know, I learned just huge amounts from the Jody and Sarge, and then also from Jim Cornette and Smoky. That was really where I got my start, got my feet wet.
Did anyone, like, anytime you were training, try to stretch you or anything, or were you too big for that?
You know what? I don't think you're probably ever too big to be stretched, really. I mean,
if they know what they're doing.
Size,
right.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? I don't know if I don't know if Sarge would actually use the word stretch, but man, he suplexed me out of my boots for a good year and a half down in Atlanta. So, and numerous times, just he beat the guys down and bring them back up and beat them down. So yeah, I mean, I guess stretched in sort of a sense, yeah.
Right. Now, when you were in WWF, who did you think was like a better fit for you as a manager, Harvey Wippleman or Johnny Polo?
Honestly, neither one. And originally they were going to put me with DiBiase. Mm-hmm. That was the original thought. And then somehow the Raven Johnny Polo thing got in there. But I really don't know. It could have maybe worked by itself, but again, I was so new to talking and doing interviews and everything, and not had enough experience with that. I mean, they could even later on they even brought Cornette in. So there's different ways it could have went with, I think.
Did you like any of the managers you were ever with?
You know what? I was not really real big on managers. It's not that I really didn't like them. I think the characters and some of the things I've done in the past could have worked without them. So, as a Kronik tag team, we did it without a manager, and then as Wrath, as a single, I did it without anybody. So,
yeah. Do you think Johnny Polo, did he just not have it in his heart to be a manager? Do you think he wanted to be a wrestler at the time?
I don't know. I mean, I don't really think he took it very seriously. The guy was very big into the party scene, and I don't know if he still is or not, but I just don't know. It's hard to say. I don't think, maybe he was just looking for a way to get his foot in the door at the time.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Were you surprised when, he kind of reinvented himself into Raven?
Not really. I don't know. Never big Johnny Polo or Raven fan.
Right.
I just, the guy, I don't know, he just, I don't know. I can't really say. I just, really no comment, I guess.
Mm-hmm. When you say about, someone being in the party scene, talk about Scott Hall before, was that anything you were ever into? Or did you try to stay away from that?
I think I was married at the time, and I think I did try to stay away from it. Everybody has a few drinks and lets loose occasionally. But you gotta, when it's time to work, and you gotta go to work, and you gotta get up and you gotta train, you gotta work out, you gotta make the next town, you gotta fly. Those things, you gotta set your priorities. And, a lot of people didn't do that.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a question from the board, Incher?
Well, I just wanted to say I was a big fan of the Meltdown. That's probably one of my favorite finishers. And you pulled it off so well.
You know what? And I invented that. I'm taking full credit for it.
We were talking about that earlier. We were wondering who invented it.
Yeah. Well, there was people would do a partial one where they would just do a pump handle slam and then they would dump the guy just about halfway up. Mm-hmm. But I was studying a lot of old tapes. I'm sitting at home one night and doing my homework, and I'm thinking, what can I do to change this? So then that's when I pulled it, made it to a full slam up onto the shoulders, tuck the head, and then make a slam. So I went down the next day right at the power plant. I'm like, okay, this is, boom, 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 and then, it was on from there. So yeah, a lot of people tried it later. I think, I don't know, Tess was trying to do it for a while, and a few other people, but yeah, I definitely, that was mine.
Yeah. If you actually listen to the first half hour of the show, Incher said that Tess never lived up to your pump handle slam.
No.
Well,
never.
Good. That's awesome. Well, I appreciate that, man.
Yeah. How would you rate yourself as a worker?
On a scale of what?
Just 1 to 10, I guess.
Okay. Well, I don't know. That's tough.
Or what would you say makes a good worker?
I think it takes so many different things. It takes, obviously, the look, being an athlete, having athletic ability. I mean, you can be a big guy, and if you can't work and you're not an athlete, and that makes a big difference. There's so many things: charisma, again, the look, being able to have a good solid match, and whether that's someone leading you in the match or you leading the match. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of different things that go into it. And then there's been plenty of times where a company has pushed someone who's horrible, but after a while, I think that the people will see through it, no matter how many. If they try to shove that person down their throats, after a while, they're going to throw it up.
Well, what kind of guys did you prefer to work with? Did you like to work with guys that were smaller than you, so you could kind of play like the big man, or guys your size, or like real big guys like Yokozuna size?
You know what? I could say I worked with a lot of cruiserweights, middleweights, heavyweights. I worked with Yoko. Yoko was very big, but he was so big that I would be the little guy in that match. I would be doing all the selling. Even if I was flying off the top rope, giving him the clothesline, he would be the guy that would stagger and not take the bump, and it'd take forever for me to get him to bump. But that was just a story. But then again, working with cruiserweights, that was that wasn't a problem either. I really didn't mind. I guess probably fun-wise and really getting to do all the things I really want to do, I would say would probably be with the cruiserweights, just because I could throw them up in the air and catch them and do so many things with them.
Right. We get a caller on the line. Who is this?
This is Damian Lee, your favorite porn star.
Okay.
Oh man, you got to get rid of this guy.
Like that. What is going on, buddy?
Oh, we're talking.
What's happening, man?
Do you you guys know each other?
No, I don't. I didn't get your name. Do you say Dan?
Damian Lee.
Damian, okay.
You're on there with Bryan Clark. You got a question for Bryan?
Yeah, Bryan. How can I get you to come to XWE? Take some bumps.
Man. He's a promoter. He wants to know how he
Oh, okay. You know what? You probably have to go to WrestlingFix.com and get in touch with Georgianne. The lady's in touch. She handles all my appearances and fees and that kind of stuff, so you might want to give her a call.
Okay.
Awesome. And my just wanted to get on there and say that I'm a fan. I haven't seen or heard from you around, and any chances of going to TNA or returning back to WWE?
No, I don't think so. I enjoyed my career, very happy with it, and I've moved on. And so, yeah, I don't want to be one of those guys that hangs around too long. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate your time, guys. It's good to hear you guys again. Just thought I'd pop in there and saw that you had him on there. And Mr. Clark, thanks for the time. You guys
all
take
right, man.
care.
Have a good day.
Thanks for calling in, Damian.
Hey, peace.
Former guest of ours. Yes. Very interesting.
Glago13 from our message board. He wants to know, how did you enjoy teaming with Mortis?
At the time, and when it first started, I thought, it had possibilities. But when it finally got introduced and everything, really just sort of glad it was over with, and really preferred, once I did Wrath, my way, and got out of the costume and just did it with my spin, was much happier being a single.
Mm-hmm. Did you like working against him? Chris Canyon?
You know what? I really didn't work with them a whole lot. I worked with those guys a little bit and then went out on my own. But yeah, it was okay for the time, but I'm glad it didn't last a real long time.
Did you prefer working as a babyface or as a heel?
I would probably say babyface, but with some heel qualities,
Mm-hmm.
and I always sort of worked that way anyway. Even back to my Smoky Mountain days, even though I was a heel with Kevin Sullivan, those kind of things, I still would get a babyface pop, and then of course later when I feuded with him, that kind of thing, and then later on as Adam Bomb, same thing. Started out as a heel, ended up going face, and then still would get the responses, somewhat as a face, even though I was a heel.
Yeah. Could you tell by the crowd reaction that you were starting to get over as a babyface when you were a heel as Adam Bomb?
Yeah, I mean, and you can get that, especially from the house shows and stuff. You can get that feel, and I think a lot of times the agents and promoters get that feel too, and so that's why a lot of guys end up turning, whether they just really can't help it but do it.
Mm-hmm. Do you think sometimes they kind of take away what the people liked about a character when they turn them babyface? People might get behind a guy, then they turn him babyface, and they might try to make him act too goody-goody, and it kind of backfires?
Yeah, probably so. But if they can keep that edge to them, but yet still, like with Steve Austin, for example, when they did his turn, they did him right as far as when they did the turn with him, he could still basically say and do what he wanted, but still have that edge so that he would get the same pop.
Mm-hmm. What did you think of Vince McMahon? Did you enjoy working for him?
You know what? I really didn't. That's just being straight up with you about it. I enjoyed working with Bischoff much more.
Mm-hmm.
Vince, as far as being approachable, Eric was always there if I needed to talk to him for anything, whereas Vince wasn't the same case.
Did he ever promise you anything that just didn't ever happen?
You know what? Yeah, there were a few things, but yeah, there were situations where that was one of the reasons I basically ended up leaving up there. And I'm one of those type of people. You tell me something, tell me, but if you're not going to do it, then don't tell me. Just keep it to yourself. And they basically said, well, we're going to put the Intercontinental strap on you back. This was, with the Mabel thing, in your house pay-per-view. And he didn't follow through with it. And there was really no reasoning after that. So I figured, well, my time was pretty much up there, and I knew that I could go to Atlanta. So that was, always an option for me, and then I decided to take that.
Did you have any run-ins with the Click during your Atom Bomb run? We always hear a lot of stories about them.
Yeah.
Maybe Scott.
Well, how about let's start with the name, the Click. Let's start with that. I was the one who gave them. Yeah, I'll take credit for that too, because I gave them that name.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they were always up each other's ass. So I had to call them something, so I named them the Click. They were really just a big group of crybabies if you think about it, and Vince catered to them. And so, they very selfish type people. Not really. I think they took away, a lot from the business at a time when, it was tough up there because it was just business-wise, it was down. Vince was going through his big steroid trial, and really the people that he had there, even Vince had said, well, you got to stick with me through this trial, it'll pay off for you in the end, kind of thing. And it never happened. That was another reason I'd left, because, the longer I stayed there, the more my money went down. And I was thinking, well, I can definitely make more money in Atlanta, and I did.
Mm-hmm. Do you think they tried to keep you down? They didn't like you or anything? Maybe they even went to Vince?
You know what? Probably so. And and it wasn't just me. I mean, there was anybody like that.
Maybe it wasn't
anybody that. Yeah, exactly. So it was just not just with me. There were other guys too. And even with Bryan, I mean, it was the same thing with him, because we talked about it, later on in our careers. The same thing with him.
During the after the steroid trial, were they really strict on the steroid testing then?
You know what? Believe it or not, they really were.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays with the growth hormone and that kind of stuff, you can see Triple H is still using, and other guys are too. You can see it, but at that time, yeah, I mean, they definitely were testing. We would get tested all the time. So I actually think it. I think with all the, with his trial going on during that time frame, they were actually spending money to stick to it and make sure the policy was followed through with.
We've actually had some people on here who say that steroids they think are actually good for wrestling if you don't abuse them or whatnot. What are your thoughts on steroids in wrestling, or just in general, I guess?
You know what? I'm sure that I think that, like I said, maybe there is a good way. It's like with the growth hormone, I mean, they're saying it's like the fountain of youth, and it helps your joints and tendons, and if your body's completely torn apart. Maybe there is a place for it. I'm not saying there's not. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that there could be.
Something I always wondered, because I remember watching some time, was Giant Gonzalez came in, confronted you and Harvey Whippleman. I think it was on Wrestling Challenge. And, I don't think anything ever happened. Was that going to go anywhere, and did you ever, work with him, on a house show or anything?
Never worked with him anywhere, other than that one thing you're speaking about. That was it. I think maybe they got rid of him after that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, that never really went anywhere. I don't know if it's called maybe Harvey was his manager at one time previously or something,
Mm-hmm. So like there was no plans for it to go onto a pay-per-view or anything.
No. And thank God, I'm sure that would have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's some
I
brutal
can't imagine.
for everybody. Brutal for me, brutal for everybody to watch, I'm sure. I don't think you had tough having matches with anybody,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, once you left WWF, and how long was it before you went to WCW? I think it was like a few years in between there.
You know what? It seemed like that. I was actually, I spent 1 year after I left WWF. I was gone 1 year, and I actually spent some time in Europe. Came back to the U.S. and actually signed a deal with Bischoff, signed with WCW. And then I spent like another year or so with them getting ready to push that whole gimmick, just because they just kept putting it off. And so, I was under contract with those guys. I was still training and taking martial arts and basically spending a few days a week at a dojo and getting ready for the gimmick. But it took another, like I said, about a year or so for it to actually get up and running.
Mm-hmm. Did you know
at the time?
Yeah. I was just saying, did you know Eric Bischoff at all from like your short stint in AWA?
You know what? I really, other than I don't even actually recall meeting him up there. Maybe I did. I just don't quite remember. But no, nothing prior to that. I mean, other than we both live in Atlanta, and I had a contact with him, and then we met. Once my contract was, because I'd met him before. He told me that, hey, as soon as your contract expires, you let me know. And so he wanted me there, and I wanted to be there. That was even before I ever went to WWF, I always wanted to work in Atlanta because I'd lived in Atlanta, and that's just, that's, to me, I just wanted to be part of WCW always, where a lot of people wanted to go to New York. I was just the opposite.
Mm-hmm. Like, when you were a wrestling fan before you got into wrestling, were you more of like an NWA fan or WWF?
I would, a little bit of both.
Yeah.
In college, of course, WWF was huge, and when I was in the military also, it was huge. But growing up as a kid, Florida Championship Wrestling, and then the NWA stuff. So I was exposed to a little bit of all of it,
Yeah. Was there any like particular guy that really you saw like on TV and you're like, that's a guy that makes me want to become a wrestler?
You know what? There were a lot of people, and actually, another guy that really helped me a lot and really helped me get a break with Smoky Mountain was Paul Orndorff. I always liked his intensity, his style, and he actually put me over to Cornette, and Cornette brought me into Smoky Mountain. So he's another guy I got to give some credit to for helping me out. But yeah, Paul, I enjoyed his style. And everybody, of course, like Hogan. When you're that age, you say, oh yeah, Hogan and Warrior, the guys that were over at the time. But Paul, I would say especially.
Yeah. When you met Hogan, like in WCW, I guess, how was he? Like, was he an approachable guy? Was he easy to get along with?
Yeah, never any problems with him. As a matter of fact, him and Bryan were pretty close. Bryan would fly back and forth from Tampa with him to wherever we were at. So yeah, I mean, I had interaction with him, quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. You got another question from the message board, Incher?
Yeah, actually I do. Glaugo13 from the message board, he has another question. He wants to know, did you think Kevin Nash ending your winning streak killed your momentum back in '98?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think so. I mean, because the whole idea of keeping me undefeated was sort of like Goldberg and getting me on that run. And I went for like, I don't know how many months, 6, 7, 8 months, whatever, undefeated, just mowing through people. Yeah. It was getting over. That's when I had the meltdown and everything was popping, And then, of course, Nash has got to step in and say, well, no, whatever. I got to have the belt again for the, whatever. But, yeah, absolutely. He killed it, and then he beat Goldberg again. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Once again, self-serving and, not helping the business, or at least not helping that company at the time.
Mm-hmm. I was really enjoying that run. It was good stuff.
Hey, I was too, man. But yeah, I was. When that happened, that really, I was unhappy about it, to say the least.
Does that kind of take like some of your motivation away when you see they just kind of end it because this guy wants to, beat another undefeated guy?
You know what? It did, but then again, it didn't. I was still trying to, be professional about it and keep working hard. And I always did. I always had a really good work ethic. And so, yeah, it was disappointing. just because it was getting over. If he'd have beaten me, it'd have been no big deal if it, it was not working. But that was probably the reason that he wanted to do it.
Right. Yeah.
So.
You said you were like doing martial arts and stuff. Did you like do that specifically for the Wrath character?
Yes, I did actually. Yeah. I'd always, weight training and then like I said, college football and all those things. But then to get into the martial arts, specifically for that gimmick, yes, that was I learned a lot from it. It helped me out, especially my flexibility and just some of the things that I was able to do. I was always able to, be a high flyer and go off the top, no problem, and do those kind of things that, the flip off the apron and just, a lot of stuff big guys, wouldn't do. Normally just want to, not leave their feet. But yeah, it helped me absolutely.
Yeah. Now, what did you think of like Ernest Miller and Glacier as like as far as like wrestling in the ring with them?
You know what? They both had a long way to go. Nice guys outside the ring. I'm not knocking that. But Ernest was still new, good martial artist, but still real new to the business. Later on, he was getting it, especially his mic time. He found his niche with his type character stuff. But with Glacier, he never really had a chance really to get that character up and running. And I don't know if it would have worked anyway. Same thing with Mortis. With the mask and stuff, and just the character was outdated. That's why I really wanted to get away from it, put my own spin on it, because out of that whole group, Ernest got doing his comedy thing, and then me with Wrath with this more serious and the Meltdown thing. But the other two really just went nowhere with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, were you happy to just go by Brian Clark, or would you prefer to keep the Wrath name?
You mean when I started tagging? You mean, or what part?
Just in general, would you have? Did you think it was a good choice to kind of drop a gimmick name and just go with Brian Clark?
You know what? At the time, yeah, especially when we were going to the tag team part of it, as just as Wrath as a singles, yeah, that was fine because it was working.
Yeah.
Just like with Sting, that type, that single name thing, that was working still, even through the late '90s and stuff. So that that was working for me. But then as a tag, of course, Brian Adams, Brian Clark, and all the similarities, that definitely seemed the way to go on that.
Mm-hmm. Just let everybody know, you brought up earlier about WrestlingFigs.com, and if you go there, I guess you can, is it Georgian Markopoulos?
Yeah, if you go under, I think current events or stuff, and then go under, you'll see all my autograph appearances and all those kind of things that I've got coming up.
That's cool. She's a really nice lady. She posts
excellent. Very. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I guess you're going to be at the Sign-O-Mania that's coming up?
Yeah, that's going to be, I think it's like the next couple of weeks. I can't think of the name of the city right offhand. I know I'll fly into Philadelphia and then go from there, but it's not too far from Philly. Mm-hmm. And then I've got a real big one in December with Hogan and Flair. Who else is on that? I think King Kong Bundy and some NFL players. And that's coming up, I think it's like December, the second week in December. So that's another one you can check out on the site.
Oh, excellent. That sounds like a good one.
Yeah, that will be.
Yeah. Cheap plug for us. You can listen to our King Kong Bunny interview on our archives, which is very rare because he doesn't do many interviews.
Yeah, Bundy, I haven't seen him in a long time, but, the times I was around him, he was hilarious, so it had to be good.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Do you enjoy going to those shows and, meeting with some of the fans?
Yeah, you know what? It's like I said, I really haven't done anything in a while, pretty much since I retired, after we finished up in Japan. And now, just to go back and see the people, it's not something I want to do all the time. Right. I'm out here in Scottsdale, Arizona, and retired from the business, but just to go back and once a month, maybe a couple times a month, and go back, different places and stuff. Yeah, that's cool. Mm-hmm. And then again, and springtime I'll be over in Europe, and I haven't been back to Germany in a while, so that was a real big fan base for me also. So that should be fun.
Yeah. Was it ever hard to start talking openly about wrestling with fans?
You know what? Not really. It's just something. I didn't do a whole lot of interviews. Back then when I was under contract stuff, because I was so busy. I mean, I was always on the road or training or either recovering from an injury or something. So now it's a little easier to do. Mm-hmm. The schedule's not as brutal. But when you're on the road, man, especially in the WWF days, you're talking 270, 280 days out of a year. Then you still got to try to have some family time in that. That's rough.
Yeah. How would
I know the schedule's not as bad now.
How would you compare the schedule when you went to WCW compared to the one you were doing in WWF?
It was not as busy. There were. I still had some house shows, and of course every Monday Nitro and those kind of things. But it was definitely a lot better on me, and also, just in general, mentally, physically, all the way around. It was much better.
How much had wrestling changed from those couple of years where you weren't on TV, from Atom Bomb until you showed up in Nitro? Were you surprised how big wrestling had gotten?
Well, I guess so. But then that was a time where everybody was leaving New York and coming to WCW. So, of course, I was following every week just like everybody else was. And there were times where I would go to TV tapes and still not ready to debut the character kind of thing, but still I was following along. So, I could see what was happening and stuff. I just wish it would have been Wrath, like the singles Wrath from the beginning. It would have been a lot more time and probably a chance for me to get that character over versus, being in the martial arts type thing.
Yeah. Did you ever feel like there was a glass ceiling in WCW? You should have went higher?
Well, there was obviously one. You had so much. The talent roster was, like the USC college football. There's 3 or 4 deep at every position. It's sort of, they're just, there were so many people, and Eric had, everybody under contract. People that probably shouldn't have never been under contract were.
Right.
So there was, a long ladder to climb, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Someone here in the chat room, Smelly Gante, they want to know what it was like seeing your first action figure.
Oh, wow. Let me see. That was probably, 94 or 5? Of course, it was flattering. It was cool, all those things. And I actually just got a new one just come out. Actually, I say a new one, the classic.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm old enough to be a classic now, so that's coming out, or is out, I should say.
Right. I think that's the Atom Bomb one out.
Yeah. I think they're talking about doing a Kronik possible, and then maybe a Wrath one between now and sometime in the near future.
Well, that'd be cool. Because I think Jax is. They won't be making the WWF ones or WWE ones pretty soon.
I think they're trying to crank out what they can before the deal changes or something along those lines.
Yeah. Do you keep any of your memorabilia?
I do. I have my office here at home, where I have I guess a decent amount of stuff. But I've got some photos, of course, all the people I've met, celebrities and then not, celebrities, and then just trips, photos, and all around the world. I've been to just about everywhere once, if not a few times. So, yeah.
Right. Did you have the Atom Bomb goggles?
You know what? They're probably somewhere in that dust. I could probably find them. I had somebody actually request those a while back at one of the conventions, but
oh, really?
I think I've got them. I've got them somewhere around. Yeah.
Yeah. So, when you guys formed Kronik, how did that come about? Was it your guys' idea, or did they come to you?
Well, I was actually recovered I was out for about 9 months with knee surgery, and that was at the end of the Wrath gimmick. And Bryan actually called me and thought about us tagging up,
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, I wasn't really sure, but I was open to it, I guess, at the time. And we started talking and coming up with ideas and stuff. So then, once we actually did it, man, it was it just clicked,
Yeah.
There's that word again, right?
It was
it did.
Definitely tell the chemistry between you two guys right away.
Yeah, it was. It was right there. So many similarities. We were both military, both Air Force, both powerlifters while in the military. Both named Bryan, both 6'6". His birthday was April 14th. Mine's March 14th. Just so many things, in common. It was strange, but yet it was the chemistry and, and in the locker room was even better because we never had to worry about any shit because there was nobody going to kick both our asses,
Right.
And I always had his back and he always had mine no matter what. There's so many times where he's calm me down in situations where I was ready to rip somebody's head off, and vice versa, same with me with him. But yeah, he was. We always had each other's back, and there was a lot of good things about that, especially with the political side of the locker room at times, you know.
Mm-hmm. Were you cool with like the Kronik name and like the High Times finisher name, or did you think it was a good fit, or would you have preferred something else?
You know what? At first, I was like, well, I'm not sure. Bryan actually, I think Bryan asked some fans somewhere. I don't know if it was online or what, and that name came up, and I was like, you know, he said, well, what if we spell it like, you know, the band Korn and flip the K and do it that way? And I was like, all right. So, you know, we did it, and then we just sort of played along with it. Neither one of us are really pot smokers, but, you know, just one of those things where, and then we came up with the High Times and that kind of stuff, and, you know, so, you know, it didn't bother us, and we sort of embraced it, you know, as we went along.
Mm-hmm. Well, when Vince Russo came in, what did you think of him, and what did you prefer, him or Bischoff?
You know what? I knew Vince Russo from my time in WWE. We actually did some magazine photo shoots and that kind of stuff together. He was a writer for the magazine at the time. Got along with him real well. I actually did a thing in Vegas here, a shoot with him there and stuff. So I knew him, got along fine, no problems. Still, any in WCW got along. But I just like when Eric was in control, I really knew where I stood. And even with Russo also, it's just that I just wasn't real crazy about some of the storylines, you know, but, you know, there's always going to be, you know, crazy storylines in this business. So, you know. Was
there anything in particular like he like brought up and you guys just wouldn't do it?
Yeah, I mean, there were times that we basically shut things down. I was like, shut or shot, however you want to. We just say, yeah, some of the ideas we just said, no, this wouldn't work, and we'd pitch it, put a spin on it. You know, and he was usually pretty good with it. So, and Bryan really had. I mean, Bryan's actually relationship was better with him than mine. So that was good. I mean, there were times where Bryan would, you know, we'd be talking. You know, I would know what we were doing, whereas a lot of people had no idea. We would know what we were doing before we even got to Nitro on Monday. We knew what we were going to do, how we were going to do it, those kind of things.
Who were some like the tag teams you enjoyed working with? You thought you like had the best matches with?
Oh man, wow, there's a bunch of people. I don't know. I was somewhere. I don't know. Somebody was telling me about it or something. There was a match where we had in Germany with Rey Mysterio and Kidman, which was one that sticks out in my mind. Just because of the reception and being in Europe and everything. Those guys were always pretty fun to work with. Really didn't like working with the Harris brothers just because to me they would just seem a little limited on a lot of things that, you know, our style. But yeah, I would say a lot of those guys working with Ray and Hoovy and Kidman. You know, working with the Natural Born Thrillers, it was okay, but they were still so green and learning, and it was, you know, we did it and we got through with it, and we ended up winning the world titles twice. But still, I think we could have been programmed with a lot of other people. But you know, you had the Kevin Nashes and the DDPs and those guys who either didn't want to work with us or would not work with us. One that either looked more impressive or better, or whatever the case may be. Just, you know, would stay within their little group to work and not work outside of it. So, you know, so be it.
Looking back, do you ever wish, like, maybe you would have been more political? Or are you glad you just stayed out of all that?
You know what? I can look at myself in the mirror each and every day. You know,
right.
I really don't. You know, you are who you are. You know, and for me to try to fake my way into that thing. Whereas, like with me and Bryan, that was real, and we were tight, and it was cool, and it was, you know, no problem. And me trying to force my way into that kind of a group or that type of person, that's just not me, you know. And I don't know. I'd probably make myself sick just trying to tolerate putting up with, like, you know, like with an X-Pac or Scott Hall or that type of person. I mean, you know, for example, both of those guys. I mean, look at them now, you know. So,
right.
So you know, I'm much happier where I'm at.
We got a caller here on the line. Who is this?
It's Jai.
Jai, I get a question?
Yeah, what do you think of somebody like Shawn Michaels that's main eventing today, that's still there after all these years?
What do I think about Shawn Michaels, man? Not a whole lot. You know, he was always a little bitch. He probably still is, except now he's a Christian. You know, so which I don't even buy that. You know, I just never liked the guy. From all, you know, he was such an ass back in New York when I was there, and then for him to all of a sudden change and say he's a different person and forgive me for all the bad shit he's done. Well, you know, I'm not buying it. And there are a lot of people that, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that, maybe I'm the only one to say it, but I don't really have much use for the guy, you know.
What did you think about Ric Flair's retirement?
What did I think about it?
Yeah.
Oh, man, it's about time. You know,
right.
I'm surprised. Well, I'm not surprised, you know. He stayed around, I think, too long, but, yeah, it was overdue, that's for sure.
Was there any, like, tag teams you wish you guys would have got to work with, you know, when Kronik was really, like, going strong?
You know what? I would have really liked to work with APA. That would have been. I would like to work with Bradshaw and Ron Simmons.
Yeah.
That would have been some guys. I would like to work with the Hardys.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that would have been interesting. Yeah, there are a lot of good teams out there, but yeah, those two right off the bat I think about. A lot of WCW guys, like the older guys, I really didn't really care about, like with the Pages and the Halls and the Nash. That didn't bother me not working with them. I really did because I knew them, so I didn't really give a shit to work with them, you know.
Right.
But those other guys had a lot to offer. Just the APA gimmick that was over, and then the Hardy Boys, of course, they were over. So that would have been things that would have probably have worked.
Yeah, I know they weren't really around at the time, and they, you know, kind of past their prime. But would you like to have did something with like LOD, the Road Warriors?
Yeah, I mean, if it was a different era where you know you go back in time, kind of thing. Yeah, sure.
Right. Well, we got the time machine here.
Yeah, exactly. That'll work.
Right.
Set it up.
I actually read once that I guess someone there wanted you guys to do the Doomsday device, but either you or Bryan Adams weren't like comfortable doing it because it's like kind of dangerous. Was that true?
You know what? I think we actually did it on a pay-per-view where we won the belts in Daytona.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did it. Really didn't feel that comfortable with it. And it was a dangerous move. I think one guy got his neck really busted up from it. I think Henry Godwin got messed up from it pretty bad.
Yeah.
Probably into his career. So yeah, I mean, I don't mind being stiff with guys at all. I don't mind, beating them down, whatever. You know, a stiff match is okay with me. I liked it in Japan and whatever. But you know, when it comes to putting somebody's career on the line, then that's pushing it a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Did anyone ever complain, like getting in the ring with you guys, saying you guys are too stiff?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, we beat the piss out of a lot of people.
Right.
Well, yeah, they may not have, they may not have complained right to me, but they complained to other people. Oh yeah, I'm sure. I mean, we were stiff. I mean, they were plenty nice to beat the piss out of a lot of people. So yeah, that was not uncommon. But we could take it too. We didn't just do it and then not get the receipt for it. I mean, that wasn't a problem.
Mm-hmm. When you said about you enjoyed wrestling guys like Ray and Billy Kidman and Hoovy and whatnot. Did you ever have a problem like wrestling guys that were like really small? Or do you think that just really made for a good match?
You know what? It varies. I think if the little guy is over but if the little guy's not over and you're just going to kill him, then they just want to get it over with in a minute or two, put your finish on and be done with it. But yeah, I mean, you can tell a good story that way too. I mean, it's like slaying the dragon kind of thing, you give a little guy a chance, and keep telling the story, and then, so yeah, there's possibilities with it. Yeah, it was okay with me if I was, if it was working with smaller guys, wasn't a problem.
Right. Now, when WCW was like started going down, could you tell like the locker room knew things weren't very good anymore?
You know what? Right along the time it went under, I was out. It was weird because Bryan was out with an appendicitis, and I was out with a concussion from a chair shot from an animal, no less. So yeah, I mean, we could tell. It was, but there were all rumors that someone else was going to buy it out. But of course, that wasn't the case.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever, when WWE when they bought it, did you just think this is really bad for wrestling?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I thought it was bad. Everybody thought it was bad. And it ended up being bad for wrestling. At least I think so. So, yeah, that, you know. Hold on one second. I'm going to plug this phone in.
Yeah, no problem. We can wrap it up here in a sec. What's your call in? It's 508-64. Yep.
Okay. All right, cool.
All right.
I just didn't want to have it down on me. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah, I was just saying, you're saying, you thought it was bad for wrestling when WWE bought WCW. Did you ever think that there would come a day where there was no WCW?
You know what? I was, when the Time Warner AOL merger, that kind of thing, it was a possibility. I think that they were towards the end, of course, they were losing some money, so a way to stop that, of course, is to sell the company, and that's what they did. So, yeah, it was always a possibility, I guess, towards the end at least.
When you guys were, even before WCW went under, did WWF ever try to get you guys to jump ship?
No, because we were pretty locked up in a solid contract.
Right.
My whole time in Atlanta, I was always in a pretty solid deal with good money. Mm-hmm. So it never really came up again. Personally, I never really had the desire to go back. I tell you, I mean, I was pretty happy with being in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm. When you guys went to WWE, could you tell that like the locker room didn't like you guys being there? All the WCW guys.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I had a gut feeling from the time. Bryan was the one who really put that deal together. I, on the other hand, I wanted to do the Japan thing, and we actually ended up doing that later, which has actually turned out better. But yeah, I mean, I could tell, especially when we got up there, that they didn't want us there. They pretty much saw us as the enemy. And that's too bad, just because the fact that, probably not too bad for those guys, but the fact that they could have done a lot more business. There was, how many times people have said that Vince really screwed that angle up.
Oh, yeah.
It's true. I mean, there's so many ways to do it. But yeah, when we got there, I never felt comfortable. I mean, I was glad I left. I left for a reason. And then even, 7 years later, I knew why. When I did this first day back there, I was just like, fuck this place. I just didn't. I knew I didn't want to be there, but it was one of those things where your partner wants to do it, and you go along with it because he's going along with my ideas too.
Right. What are your thoughts on the Unforgiven match between you guys and Undertaker and Kane?
Not a whole lot. I mean, there was. Of course, the match sucked. I know that, and everybody knows it. But the bottom line was that I had just been in a car wreck probably about a month before, and a herniated disc in my neck. Basically lost all the feeling in the left side of my arm, atrophy on my chest, my tricep, and basically took all I could do to get to that point. And Kane had been out with a staph infection in his arm, so he hadn't worked in I don't know how many months. Me and Bryan, on the other hand, we had been off for probably a year, and they only put us in a couple of house shows against other guys, not even Kane and Taker. So the chemistry was not there. Being rusty was there. It all showed. So that, along with injuries and just not, I put it back on them, just the fact that if they really wanted it to work, they would have, they put everybody else, some working time together.
You think it didn't matter anyway? Like they just?
No, I don't think it mattered anyway. Mm-hmm. Jim Ross was there, and I just think he had a lot to do with it. I think Jim Ross is, the referee, always wanted to be an athlete, the jock sniffer, always trying to want to be, right. And they put him in, like head of talent relations, and the guy thinks that he knows a lot about the business. He's a commentator, he's a commentator, and that's what he is. He's not a judge of talent, and so. But yeah, he had a lot to do with it, and then there were other things that were out of our control as far as injuries and that stuff.
Yeah. So someone asked this, I don't know if you want to talk about it or whatever, but was it true, the story that you guys didn't want to go to OVW?
I wasn't going to go. Right. I can tell you that right now. Hell no, I wasn't going to go. Give me a fucking break. Yeah. No way was I going. Yeah, I mean, I think Bryan actually went because he may have had a little bit more in his contract, whereas when I was in WCW, I had more in my contract. So I really didn't need to go and wasn't going to go. and Bryan was still. I think Bryan, it helped him as far as, you know, he got to spend a lot of time with younger guys, helped them with their interviews, and helped them with a lot of stuff. So I heard a lot of good stuff that he was there while he was there at that time, just finishing up his contract. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I just said my deal. I was going to get paid whether I was there or not there, and I was going to be at home.
Yeah. Right.
So I still got paid. Yeah. You know?
So it'd be kind of silly to even go there, especially if you realize they weren't going to like use you guys very well. So what's the point?
They weren't going to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's why, again, I said the turnaround was for us to go back to Japan, which worked out great for us.
Yeah. How long did you guys do that? Like the Japan run?
I'd say about a year. You know, we beat Muda and I forgot the other guy's name. Anyway, there in Tokyo. So that was real big. Stan Hansen presented us the belts there. So that was a cool deal. I mean, Stan Hansen was a guy that, man, I always loved him, his working style. Mm-hmm. And finally got to meet him and, of course, to win the belts and have him give us the belts. That was huge.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we got to finish. Yeah, absolutely. He was one of my favorite guys again, and to be able to finish up in Japan and on a very strong note, that was a good thing.
You ever think maybe you guys should have went to Japan earlier, or you yourself? Because, you know, kind of like the big athletic American guy always gets over really big there.
Yeah, you know what? We could have. It still worked out for us either way.
Right.
Yeah, we could have went there early, but I was still happy with it, man. It was a really good way to end my career. And you know, one of those things where it's time to call it a day, and it was, because you know you just really get to realize how stiff and how brutal Japan is, and then on you physically. But yeah, I was glad to.
Would you like to have gone there like earlier in your career, like you know, more like when you're in your prime?
You know what? Possibly. But again, it probably could help me out, especially like during the Smoky Mountain era, prior to going to WWF. That probably would have been a benefit, yes.
Yeah. Someone in the chat room, everyone always has to have names you can't pronounce. AF, we'll just call him AF, that's good. He wants to know what was it like wrestling Goldberg.
You know what? No problems at all working with Bill. He was always professional with us, and we were with him. Never any problems with him, other than the time he knocked himself out, charging into the turnbuckle. You know, did the shoulder, you know, between the ropes and knocked himself out. Yeah, completely knocked himself out. We were supposed to give a double choke slam, and he couldn't even pick him up because he was knocked out. I think it's on YouTube if you look at it. It's pretty funny.
What went through your mind then? Like, what are we supposed
I was like, oh man, I was like, did this guy break his neck or what? You know, I knew he didn't break his neck, but I was just like, he had a big, you know, right away there's split on his head and swelling. I'm like, oh man, great, this guy's knocked himself out. And I looked over at Bryan too, you know, so it was like, oh fuck, what are we gonna do? You know, he sort of came to at the end, but yeah, you know, stuff like that happens in the ring.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
I always thought Goldberg was actually underrated, because I thought, like, all the moves he did, just, like, really, like, devastating, like, he's really just, you know, killing the guy. And, you know, that's what I want to watch wrestling. I want to see guys, like, you know, everything looks like they're really hitting each other.
You know, and like I said, a lot of stuff we did and a lot of stuff Goldberg did was very stiff. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it hurt. I mean, it's hurt. That's just the way it is. But yeah, with Bill, I mean, all his stuff was solid and crisp. He had certain things he did, and he did them well, and people got with it. That was where you made people believe, you know, and he was able to do that.
And he's got one of the most imitated moves of all time, the spear.
Yes, of course.
Everyone does it now.
Everybody does it. Yeah, you're right.
Mm-hmm. When Bryan Adams passed away, were you guys close at the time?
Yeah. We always remained close even after we finished up in Japan and retired. But yes, we did.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember, like, you know, when you heard the news, what you were doing?
Yeah, I had someone call me at work, and they told me that someone had passed away, but they didn't say it was him. You know, it was actually a girl that was running our website at the time. She called me and told me, and I was just like, you know, I couldn't believe it and didn't want to believe it. Of course, I just was like, man, I could think of 100 people before him just because it just didn't seem possible, you know. But it was true, yeah.
I guess, you know, it's not a positive thing here, but you probably lost a lot of people that you knew in wrestling.
Yeah,
over the last few years.
Yeah, absolutely. Bryan, being absolutely the closest, man, just like a brother I didn't have. But he choked in his sleep and ended up choking to death. So yeah, it was a shock. I don't know how to put it, but yeah, it was very, very difficult to accept that. Yeah.
Why did you retire from wrestling?
Bryan and I both, we'd had our share of injuries.
Yeah.
And I had the back surgery, and actually Bryan had it also, so we both knew it was time. We were at the age where, like I said, we didn't want to be those guys still hanging around in the locker room, putting on their boots and trunks and just looking like hell, going out and, there's a time you just got to say, hey, man, and now there's still guys, even now that are still trying to lace them up and go out there.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's over with. I don't know if that's all they have or that's only their means of income or whatever it may be. But you got to be able to say, hey, you know what? I had a career, had 3-time World Tag Team Champion. It was successful. Got to do a lot, got to see a lot. So there, you just got to know when to call it a day.
Mm-hmm. Looking back, what would you say is like the highlight of your career?
You know what? I really enjoyed the singles run as Wrath. That was real big for me. Atom Bomb, bits and pieces of it were okay. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the 3-time World Tag Team Champions with Bryan. That was, it had to be my favorite. And, of course, getting the All Japan titles in Japan in front of 60,000 people with Stan Hansen giving me the belt. I mean, doesn't really get much higher than that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I really want to thank you for coming on tonight.
Absolutely. Hey, guys, I enjoyed it.
This is Eric Bischoff. Controversy creates cash. You know what else? You're listening to In Your Head